So, the official first leak for Chapter 21, yes, Chapter 21 of Boruto's 2 Blue Vortex is out. Yeah, we're only 3 months away from being 2 years into 2 Blue Vortex. That is insane. And this first official leak that we got from the Naruto team is the best kind of official leak, because it doesn't just show us an additional page of a fight we already knew was happening, but rather it's the kind of leak that gives us an insight into an important contextual conversation that happens between two of the most important characters in Boruto's 2 Blue Vortex, Sasuke and Boruto. See, because in this official leak of one of the 40 pages of Chapter 21 of 2 Blue Vortex, we are reliving a conversation between Sasuke and Boruto, specifically about Sarada. See, it's to no surprise that Chapter 21 is going to be heavy on Sarada. As in Chapter 20 of 2 Blue Vortex, we saw the return of Sarada's MS after 2 years of not seeing it. And thus the idea that this chapter was going to center around the reveal of Sarada's MS abilities and how they could play into the greater usefulness of the battle against Omnipotence, Ada, and all of those who believe that Boruto is a bad guy is not the craziest twist of all time. In fact, if this chapter hadn't been heavy on what Sarada's MS ability was, I think there'd be a lot of very aggravated readers. However, fortunately for those of you who have been itching for a new chapter, just hoping to figure out what's going on with Sarada's brand new upgraded Sharingan, you may not have to wait another 6 or so days for the official chapter to come out, as this first official leak might have told us everything that we need to know, and it may have confirmed all of the theories that yours truly has had for years. See, because I don't believe Chapter 21 is just going to reveal one of Sarada's MS abilities, but rather it will reveal both of her MS abilities, both of which that will be instrumental in the battle for Team Boruto. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, while the leak itself may not have been huge, the news we have to talk about is, because today we're talking Sarada's MS ability will defeat Omnipotence. But before we get to explaining how Sarada's about to burst onto the stage of the power relevancy in the Boruto universe, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noty bell. So, before we dive into explaining what Sarada's MS abilities are with the highest level of certainty that we've ever had regarding the subject, let's quickly go over the leak that we were given from the team at Naruto. Like I alluded to earlier, the first out of 2 pages that the Naruto team is going to give to us as official leaks is out. And in this official leak, we see Sasuke having a conversation with Boruto about Sarada's MS. A conversation, mind you, that we had never seen previously. Now, in this conversation, Sasuke is sitting down with a pre-time skip Boruto with a bandage over his eye from the slash that Kawaki placed on him, as he tells Boruto that something must have happened to trigger this. Something far beyond the grasp of all of our minds. Now, by this, Sasuke is referring to Omnipotence. Now, it's this point that Sasuke has a flashback within a flashback, thinking about how Sarada begged him to understand that Boruto would never kill Naruto, telling Sasuke that everybody must have been fooled somehow. Now, this leads Sasuke to the conclusion that everybody has been deceived. That is to say that Sasuke has decided that Sarada is correct, that the entire world is incorrect about Boruto. And the reason that Sasuke tells Boruto as to why he's choosing to believe his daughter in this regard when the rest of the world disagrees with her is because he believes that Sarada awakening her Mangekyou Sharingan is the ultimate proof of what she's saying being correct, which is sound reasoning from Sasuke for a hypothetical couple of reasons that we'll talk a bit about later. Sasuke then continues on by saying, as we face this crisis, that I, in quotation marks, referring to Sarada's MS, will become a tremendous power. Now, rather interestingly here, and now, mind you, this is a fan translation, so it may not be 100% accurate, Sasuke does say that I singular, not those eyes. Now, hypothetically, he could just be talking about the Mangekyou Sharingan as a concept, but it is still an interesting grammatical choice to simply just say that eye, as opposed to those eyes, or her eyes, implying that maybe Sasuke is only talking about one of her eyes and not both of her eyes. Another point that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. Sasuke continues on by saying, though it seems as though Sarada was unaware of her awakening herself. And this tracks because Sarada doesn't know that she awoke her MS while begging with her father. Really, only he knows that. It's not like she turned around and summoned a Susanoo or used any of her MS abilities. It was just that the stress and love tied to Boruto in this moment made her awaken her MS. And she, very notably, hasn't used her MS again since that moment. Sasuke then finishes off by saying, a time will surely come when she'll awaken, and intuitively, it should be understood. Now, obviously, this flashback is happening right now in Chapter 21 because Sarada is awakening to her MS abilities. And thus, I believe this flashback will actually happen relatively early on in Chapter 21, maybe the first 6 or 7 pages. And those final remarks made by Sasuke, and intuitively it should be understood, is most likely in reference to the fact that Sarada will intuitively understand how to use her MS abilities, even though she's never used them previously. Because that's just kind of how dojutsu abilities work. Every person we've ever seen awaken a Sharingan, a Mangekyou Sharingan, an EMS, a Rinnegan, a 6-Tomei Rinnegan, seems to be able to just intuitively figure out all of the abilities that come along with it. Sasuke's using Heavenly Hand power with a 6-Tomei Rinnegan within minutes of having it. One of the first things that Madara ever did with the Rinnegan was summoning the Ghetto statue from the moon. Dojutsu abilities kind of just come pre-downloaded whenever you get the DLC. And thus Sasuke is most likely saying in this moment that the second that Sarada does awaken to her MS abilities, she'll be able to use them at a relatively high level, making her immediately pretty relevant in terms of the Boruto power scaling. But this last panel isn't actually the panel that I want to focus on. Rather, I want to talk on the panel where Sasuke says, as we face this crisis, that I will become a tremendous power. Now this panel to me is very interesting because Sasuke says this immediately after acknowledging that surely the entire world has been deceived. And thus to me it seems as though there's a hypothetical universe here where Sasuke is saying that Sarada's MS ability will become tremendously important in a world where everybody has been brainwashed, implying that he may understand what Sarada's MS abilities are, maybe even before she does. Though I must admit this isn't the only possibility. See, because when it boils down to it, I really think there's only two possible things that Sasuke could mean when talking about the tremendous power that Sarada's MS is going to provide. The first possibility is objectively less interesting than the second one, though probably more realistic. See, Sasuke could just be stating the incredibly obvious here, telling Boruto that as we face this crisis, having somebody who is very clearly on our side, mind you, being a dual MS wielder is going to be a massive advantage. And if anybody would completely understand how massive an advantage a dual MS wielder on your side is, it would probably be Sasuke, who in some regard is still a dual MS wielder himself. Sarada is a dual MS wielder who's sympathetic to the Team Boruto cause, will not only have access to whatever her two MS abilities are, but also things like Susanoo. She proved in the moment that she awoke to her MS in front of Sasuke that she was gonna be one of the more powerful people in the Boruto universe. And thus, yeah, absolutely, as Sasuke and Boruto face this crisis, that eye will be tremendously important in terms of battling back against it. I mean, as Sasuke and Boruto are sitting there in the forest, now both exiled from their home village with two eyes amongst the two of them, somebody with two more additional powerful eyes would be a pretty big plus. And while I'd reckon that there's probably a 70 to 80% chance that this is what Sasuke is talking about in this moment, the context of this panel makes me feel as though he's hinting at something greater. See, because in just the panel prior, Sasuke acknowledges the fact that the entire world has been deceived, and then immediately after that says that the awakening of Sarada's MS is absolute proof to Sasuke that what she's saying is correct. Now, the more obvious and clear answer here is that Sasuke understands the emotions that have to go into awakening an MS in the first place, and therefore he understands that Sarada awakening her MS while telling him this thing is most likely the best lie detector test one could ask for. But even still, something about Sasuke and his relationship with Boruto sticks with me. See, Sasuke never backslides on Boruto. See, now that we have a better understanding of how Omnipotence works, and we know that even if you are able to figure out that you have been brainwashed by something like Omnipotence through either scientific research or just your intellect, even though while you may be able to break out of the clutches of Omnipotence for a little while, the way that Omnipotence works is that it slowly but surely reels you back in. This was best put on display with Shikamaru, who had the entirety of the situation about Boruto and Kawaki switching places explained to him, and was fully Team Boruto with the full knowledge of everything that had happened over the course of the last couple of years for 1 or 2 chapters. By the time that Boruto was arrested and summarily kind of released by Shikamaru, Shikamaru was already beginning to lose grasp of the conversation that him and Boruto had had. And therefore, by the time that Shikamaru decided to release Boruto, it was more of a gut instinct. But this never happens with Sasuke. Now, this could be because Sasuke and Boruto are having continual conversations about how Sarada was correct in the way that the world had deceived everybody, Sasuke included, and therefore Sasuke was getting enough constant reminders that Omnipotence wasn't able to get its hooks back into him. But we know from multiple flashback stories that we've gotten from the time skip that even though Sasuke wasn't technically deceived by Omnipotence, he was affected by it, acknowledging in his head that Kawaki and Boruto were swapped, and yet he was able to persist, and the lie that Boruto killed Naruto never creeped back into his brain. Now, while the continual contact with Boruto could have been the reason that that lie never creeped back into his brain, there's also the possibility that Sarada is the reason that lie never creeped back into his brain. And the thing is, Boruto as a story kind of needs Sarada to be the reason that lies never creep back into Sasuke's head. See, because as it currently stands, there's really no way to break people out of omnipotence. Even the most intelligent people on Earth, like Shikamaru, who are able to break themselves out of omnipotence through their own intellect and hard work, with time and separation from Boruto, eventually come under the effects of omnipotence again. And thus, even if hypothetically one day Boruto was able to prove to all of Konoha that he's a good guy, and all of Konoha went, okay, I guess we can have him back for a little bit, the second that Boruto wasn't around them for a couple of days, they would, one, think Boruto was Kawaki and Kawaki was Boruto, and two, would remember, and remember is in quotations here, that Boruto killed the 7th Hokage, Naruto. And thus Boruto would be in this perpetual cycle of trying to get everybody to realize that he's not the bad god that they think he is, regardless of how many good things that he did. Even if hypothetically Naruto is brought back to the Daikokuten and reinstalled as Hokage, we've seen that omnipotence has the ability to overwhelm physical evidence of the fact that Boruto did nothing wrong, like Uzumaki family portraits that show Boruto, Himawari, Hinata, and Naruto, where people will point at the photo of Boruto and say, oh yeah, that's Kawaki. But when they see Boruto in person, they understand that that's Boruto and that's the evil guy. Omnipotence kind of defies all logic or reason, and therefore it needs something or somebody to cancel it out. And I know a lot of you are saying,
No, well, why doesn't just Ada wish for it to go away?
well, we've already tracked that hypothetical trail. See, because in the very, and I mean very beginning of Two Blue Vortex, we see a conversation between Ada, Sarada, and Sumire, where Ada is telling Sarada and Sumire that if they want to make a wish using her omnipotence, they're welcome to, but she wouldn't recommend it because they have no way of knowing what could actually happen, thus eliminating from a plot perspective the possibility of Ada undoing omnipotence. And thus I do genuinely believe that chapter 21 is going to reveal the sun versus moon battle that's been teased since Naruto's last movie, The Last. See, because Ada's Senrigan and Sarada's MS design being the exact same as the two symbols used on the two flags of the two clans on the moon that split up into different ideologies and eventually wiped each other out, leaving only Toneri, was not done by mistake. And the true meat of this connection that makes it so meaningful is the fact that the reason that these two factions were fighting on the moon in the first place is because they were arguing about whether or not they should interfere with the ongoings of Earth, with one faction believing that the Earth had strayed too far from Hagoromo's teachings, and therefore that this should be eradicated and Earth should be restarted, and the other faction believing that Earthlings should be allowed to live the lives that they're currently living without interference from the moon. The Sun faction believed that the moon should not interfere with the ongoings of the humans on Earth. The Sun faction believed that the Earth should not be manipulated by the moon, aka the Senrigan, while the Moon faction believed that they needed to impart their worldview and their teachings onto the Earth. Kind of like how omnipotence changed the worldview of everybody on the Earth with the symbology of the moon. But how? How will Sarada fight against the power of omnipotence and the Senrigan? Well, one, she doesn't really have to battle against it. See, it's already been established multiple times that Ada isn't too stoked on the whole worldwide omnipotence blast. She doesn't like Kawaki nearly as much as she thought she did. She apologized to Boruto for the firing of omnipotence, said that she wouldn't use her ability to track Boruto as long as he stayed away from Konoha, and she even openly offered Sarada and Sumire the ability to possibly counter the previous omnipotence with a wish of their own. So it's not like Sarada and Ada are going to be going at each other's necks. They're best friends. And there's also an argument to be made here that the idea of the two of them not battling against each other also ties into the story of The Last, as the result of the battle between the Sun and Moon clans on the moon actually led to the extermination of both clans. And therefore, in the second rendition of the Sun versus Moon battle, both sides working together to undo the misguided actions of the Moon clan ideology will lead to a general betterment for the entirety of the Earth. But I still haven't really answered that question of, okay, how is Sarada going to counter the ability of omnipotence? Well, we kind of already know how at least one of Sarada's MS abilities work. She has an ability negation ability. We saw in chapter 20 that she was either able to make some kind of gravity well that sucked in jutsu, or open portals to a different dimension that also suck in jutsu. The most important thing here is that when Sarada used one of her MS abilities in chapter 20, it was shown negating the Iron Sand ability of Ryu. And thus, if Sarada already has a track record of her MS abilities having an ability negation ability, it's not crazy to assume that either that ability may also be able to stretch to things like brainwashing or genjutsu, or that her second and currently unseen MS ability will have the ability to break people out of genjutsu. That is to say, in a more cohesive, easier to understand way, is that Sarada's MS ability can fall into one of two camps: Hamui camp or the Itachi Sasuke camp. That is to say that Sarada could either have two renditions of the same ability or two separate abilities. Now, in the Kamui camp, both of Sarada's MS abilities would manifest as that black hole type ability we saw in chapter 20. Possibly one eye controlling that black hole's ability to suck in ninjutsu, and the other eye controlling its ability to break people out of genjutsu. And thus this would function like Kamui, where one eye made the user intangible, while the other allowed them to open portals that could suck other things in. However, in the Itachi Sasuke circumstance, Sarada could have her black hole MS ability tied to one of her eyes, be it her left or her right. And this ability allows for her to essentially create a long-range comma marking that can absorb any ninjutsu that she chooses, while her secondary ability, which comes from whatever eye isn't currently using the black hole ability, would have a new and separate ability that would possibly be able to break people out of genjutsu. But is there really precedent for any of these ideas coming to fruition? Kind of, actually. See, outside of the fact that we've already established that somebody needs to cancel out Omnipotence, and that ability negation has kind of been one of the biggest trends in Boruto to descale the combat, at least from a size perspective, Sarada's name in Japanese means salad, Sarada, which is just a Japanese way of saying salad. It's katakana, which is kind of just the Japanese alphabet for English words. Boruto actually just means bolt in English. There's no L in the Japanese language, so the L is replaced by the closest phonetic matching, which is R-A, ra, and there's no just straight up D in the Japanese language, so it's matched to the closest phonetic match of D-A, Sarada. And there's pretty much the exact same explanation for Boruto and bolt. But a lot of you are probably wondering why I'm talking about katakana and the phonetic pronunciation of certain Boruto characters' names right now. And the answer is, well, because usually their names mean something. See, one of the most well-known through lines in Kishimoto's writing style is the fact that all of his names mean something. Sakura is named after sakura flowers because she has pink hair and likes to wear pink. Naruto is named Naruto because of the Naruto fish cakes placed in ramen. Sasuke is named Sasuke because he's named after Sasuke Sarutobi, the real-life legendary ninja from Japan, and also the legendary ninja from Naruto, who was technically Hiruzen's father. So why would Sarada be named after a salad? Well, it's because she's not. I mean, she is. I mean, her name does literally mean salad. But many people hypothesize that the simple nature of Boruto characters' names is actually a way to throw us off the scent of what their names could actually mean. And thus, many people hypothesize that Sarada is actually named Sarada because she's named after the Hindu goddess of knowledge and wisdom, Saraswati. See, Saraswati is one of the most important gods in Hinduism, and she's most well known for being a four-armed goddess who's almost always holding a musical instrument by the name of a veena. Now, this veena in the hands of Saraswati is supposed to represent creativity in the harmonious sharing of knowledge. That is to say that Saraswati as a goddess revolves around the idea that information should flow between all humans like a river, which is why she's often referred to as the river of consciousness. And when you tie this possible connection into the Hindu goddess of knowledge and wisdom through the very obvious sun symbology connection through the design of her MS, then one could pretty obviously come to the conclusion that Sarada is meant to illuminate the world from the shadow cast on it by the moon. And thus, I believe that chapter 21 will truly once and for all show us not only one, but both of Sarada's MS abilities. And Sasuke, as little as I like to give him credit here, may have known that this was coming, because either A, he was the first person to experience this secondary ability, that is to say that the only reason that Sasuke swung to the side of Boruto and never swung back was because when Sarada awoke her MS on that fateful day 2 to 3 years ago, she unconsciously and intuitively used the ability on Sasuke to break him out of the effects of Omnipotence, which would possibly explain why he understands that that power is going to be so tremendously important moving forward in the battle against Ada in Omnipotence, and also why he believes that she'll be able to master these abilities intuitively, or B, because Sasuke understands how MS abilities manifest, which is that certain MS abilities manifest relative to the person that they're awakening in. And the certain MS abilities that awaken in the people that are currently awakening them are a reflection of the things that the person awakening the MS abilities right then and there currently want. And at the moment of Sarada's MS awakening, she was begging for Sasuke to believe that Boruto couldn't have possibly killed Naruto. And therefore, if we're being real, going based off just the rules of the Sharingan as we've been told, the most logical ability for Sarada to awaken to would be her gaining an ability that allowed for her to break others out of the mind control she was trying to break her father out of. And thus Sasuke, with his admittedly massive intellect, may have put 2 and 2 together and realized that when Sarada is actually finally able to use her MS abilities, that her MS ability will will manifest as an ability that battles against the ability that's deceiving the entire world's population. And thus, based off this just one leak, I believe it is highly likely that Sarada will actually have two separate abilities, as both of the MS wielders whose MS abilities we know in her bloodline, Itachi and Sasuke, did not fall into the Kamui camp, and rather fell into the camp of two individual MS abilities, Amaterasu and Kagutsuchi for Sasuke, and Amaterasu and Tsukiyomi for Itachi. And the prevailing theory as to how her secondary ability will work is that it'll be some kind of healing Amaterasu, a golden flame that burns but doesn't damage, but rather heals and enlightens those who bask in its flames, not only making up for the lack of healing talent she got from Sakura, but also allowing for her to battle directly against Omnipotence. But who knows, guys? Sure, this is a prediction that I made 2 years ago that's slowly but surely becoming more and more possible, but we won't know for sure for at least a couple more days. So if you guys are excited for the big reveal of what Sarada's MS ability could possibly be, tell me about it in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Now, if you excuse me, Danny Mata's in my living room waiting to film a podcast.